You call me a saint, but you know I'm a stranger, all willing and able to do what you...
The question that I got asked the most at the meditation gatherings, or what brought people to the meditation gatherings, was how do I stop thinking, or how do I slow my mind down? And while that is a valid pursuit, it's not going to happen because there's this understanding that makes a difference. And what's the understanding? The understanding is that while your thoughts feel like your own, and they are your own, you are not your thoughts. You, the label I use, your I am, your soul or your spirit, your higher self. And then there is your thoughts that you observe and you participate in. So the key is not trying to stop thinking, or not even trying to slow them down. The key is to step outside of them. So then you become the observer of them, not the participant. So when you're practicing meditation, in whatever way it looks like for you, keep in mind, you don't have to stop the thinking. You simply step outside of it, or slip outside of it, so you can now become the observer and not the participant. So, did you want to learn more? Keep watching the video. Hey everyone, how are you doing? It's April the 8th. We're going to try out a new Mr. Flip chart. He's actually right over here. Let's see if it works. Hi. So crossing my fingers that it's that it's gonna work. Technology is great when it works. Anyway, this one question, or I guess a desire that folks would often have for coming to the meditation gatherings, and it's such a common one. And while the desire is valid, the need that they're trying to fulfill isn't the right one. Let me explain. Okay, so we're going to try this. Here we go. So this is your mind. Okay, now your mind and your brain are, first of all, are two different things. Right? Your brain, they can, you can drill a hole, look at it. It's a thing, right? It's a thing. It's a big hunk of stuff, right? But your mind, so it's physical, but your mind is non-physical. And I think that's a really important clarifier, because so often the normals, especially, they have this understanding that, how's everything going? We'll see. They have this understanding that your mind somehow houses or creates your thoughts, which is a wonderful premise. It's just exactly backwards. Your brain is like this transmitter. So actually a transmitter and receiver. And it's really interesting topic for another discussion, how your brain doesn't really store it so much as it transmits and receives. So your mind is non-physical. It's not housed in your physical brain. So your mind is non-physical. Your physical brain just interacts with it back and forth and back and forth. It's like a switching station in many respects. Receiver and transmitter is probably the most important one. Okay, so here's your brain. Here's your mind. And then there is you. So let's see if this is going to work for me. So there's you. So I call it your soul, your spirit, right? Your higher self, whatever label you wish to use. Oh, hey, Cheryl, how you doing? I'm my flip chart just decided to crash this last while, so I'm trying a new one. So crossing our fingers. So your I am is your soul, your spirit, your higher self, again, whatever label you want to use. And for so many people using geometrics, this is what that looks like. So your I am, you are inside this, your thoughts. I'm gonna change this a little bit. I'm gonna add to it. So inside your mind are your thoughts. Hey, it hasn't crashed so far. What it's interesting how the broadcast software, it gets confused with green. So this is actually green, wants to make it blue, and thoughts is blue, and it makes it kind of black. But anyway, so inside your mind, let me think. There you go. Let me think, right? So think of it as you're inside a glass box, like a big a greenhouse. You're inside a greenhouse, right? So this is a greenhouse right here. Where's the undo? There we go. So this is a greenhouse, and you're inside the greenhouse. And inside the greenhouse are all these plants. Now, these are your plants, okay? So the greenhouse is your mind. And inside the greenhouse are all these thoughts, right? Now, there's you, there's your greenhouse, and there's these thoughts. There are three different things. The greenhouse is the container or the room, if you will. Then there is you, and then there are your thoughts. Now, this is an important clarifier because there is you and there are your thoughts. They are two things, right? They're not one thing. So when you're in the greenhouse, there's you looking at the plant, and it can be a lovely plant. It can be a plant that's dying, a plant that's just starting to bloom or starting to grow. And you're very attached to these. And when you look at this plant, it's go, well, that's such a beautiful plant. Or you look at this and you've nursed it back to health and it was just about done, right? And you go, I'm really proud of what I've done there. So we definitely have a close relationship with our thoughts, but we are not our thoughts. Now, that's the first thing, because people would come to meditation and they would go, I want to stop thinking. I need to slow down my thoughts. But for them, because for most folks, that greenhouse called your mind looks like this, right? It's just this big mess. And you're inside the greenhouse with all these plants. And here's what you're saying. Here's what you're saying. You're inside the greenhouse. All these plants are there. And you're going, I don't want these plants to be here, right? I need to stop thinking. So essentially what you're saying is, here I am in this greenhouse with all these plants. I don't want these plants to be here. Well, how's that going to work? When you think about it, first of all, you like some of these plants, right? And the thing of it is, those plants are in your greenhouse. They're there, right? And so it's like saying, I don't want these plants, so I want to take these plants and throw them outside the greenhouse. Right? So you're inside your mind. Here's your mind. You're inside your mind, inside this greenhouse. Where's it? All right. And here's the thoughts, and here's you. And you're saying, I don't want these thoughts to be here. That's what you're essentially saying when you would come to meditation. You, whoever, would come to meditation, me in the beginning, and go, I wanted to stop thinking. I want to slow down my thinking. I want to quiet my mind. Right? But that's, I'm going to use the N word, that's never going to work, because your mind is this switching station, and it's constantly bringing thoughts in, right? Sending thoughts out. Again, topic for another discussion. But for now, there are these things that are in there. And for you to stop them just isn't going to work. You see, that's not what the goal, I'll use that word, of meditation is. It's not to eliminate, it's not to stop the thinking. It's not looking at these plants and saying, die, you suckers, right? Or throwing them out. See, that's not the key, because it's never going to work, because your mind is always moving. But you don't want to stop your thoughts. Here's what you want to do. See, you don't want to stop your thoughts anyway. Here's what you want to do. And this is such a huge, it's like this greatest secret. Ooh, that's so cliche. But you don't need, remember I said at the beginning, that need is actually the wrong one. You don't need to stop thinking. You don't even need to slow down your thoughts. What you need to do is get outside the greenhouse. What you need to do is go from here to here. So it looks like this. Wow, this is so far still working. Look at that. To just simply do that. So when you're meditating, whatever that looks like, rather than being stuck in the middle of this, you actually move outside. And what's happening then, oh, I have another color. It says it's green. Let's see what it looks like. Instead, you ready? This is terrible, but anyway. It looks so rough. What you're doing is you're observing. Oh, that's bad. I'm still kind of. Anyway, you're observing your thoughts. So again, think of it as here's a greenhouse, there's the plants inside. You have now stepped outside. And the greenhouse is still there. You can still look in and you can see the plants, you can see the plants, you can see the plants, and some could be growing and flourishing, and it's a beautiful thing. Some could be dying. Some could be just starting, some could be sort of dying. And I mean, you see them, you're aware of them, but it's not such a big deal because you are outside them. And that's, yeah, for sure. And I think where the clarity comes from, I think the first step in bringing that clarity, this is just my experience, to your thoughts, is getting outside of them. So you start to observe them, not to be caught up in them. And I think that's such an important clarifier, because to just step outside of them, become the proverbial observer, because now you can watch them. Now you can observe them, but you're not caught up in them. I used to use an example in classes. I had a little throw mat in the workshop, in the teaching room. And I likened that to a trauma, or let's say a thought, right? Or maybe it's an undesired thought. Again, tangent, but I live on tangents. And so I said, so if you want to move this, you want to do something with this thought. But if you're standing on this rug, you can pull that rug all you want. It's not going to move because you're standing on it, right? And this works with so many things. This worked with, I don't want to digress too much, but it works with traumatic memories, right? Because a memory is a thought. So flipping back here real quick. A traumatic memory is right in here. Ooh, come on, don't crash on me. That's supposed to be MEM. But anyway, your memory is in there as well. But when we're stuck inside it, it's a lot more difficult, I find, to manage it, to change it, to massage it, to transmute it, all them words, because you're standing on it. And so for me, and I remember, especially in the beginning, I was in a wonderful, wonderful situation where my thoughts, and of course your thinking, again, digressing here, but your thinking can be what creates those things called worry and anxiety, and it goes on and on and on. And I can remember this so clearly when I was first figuring this thing out, just sitting underneath that big ass weeping willow tree in the backyard where the branches came right down to the ground. And I would sit under there. I knew nothing about meditation, but it looked like a cool thing. And I read a little bit on it. And, you know, you're supposed to, there's like this a state of awareness that changes, or you start to become aware of things that you weren't before. And I'd had my first taste of what stepping through that looking glass looked like. And it was like, wow. Well, I'm just going to ramble for a bit here. I remember that there's books, series that are out. I watched a movie called The Celestine Prophecy. And I can remember watching that, and actually tears were flowing down my face because it was like, oh my God. Yes, that is true. We do live in this interactive universe where there's so much more than this very thin veneer called our physical experience. I'm coming up to Easter. I use this as a teaching story too. The Cadbury Easter eggs that have the nice, shiny, colorful tinfoil. And I said, you look at that Easter egg and you go, wow, that's this nice big Easter egg. And you see the tinfoil. But the tinfoil, when you take it off and roll it up, it's a tiny little ball, isn't it? You really don't care so much about that. What you care about is the chocolate gooey stuff on the inside. And that's in a very accurate way. your physical experience is that shiny tinfoil. It's shiny and it's wonderful and it's all that cool stuff. But it's the chocolate underneath it that gives it form. So I had that first taste of that. And I can remember so clearly when I slipped into that observer mode, right? So the observer mode is now I'm out here observing these thoughts, right? I'm not in here. Because in here is where these things will often tend to control you. So when I sort of by accident slipped outside of it, and it was the craziest experience ever, I can remember so clearly. And for me, because I'm very, I guess you would say, yes, love it, so different perspective. Yeah, well, exactly. That's the thing, right? And the thing of it is, when you're stuck in the middle of it, you can't, all these cliches that are true, you can't see proverbial forest for the trees sort of thing. And that was the thing with me. When you're stuck in this quagmire, it's like being in your greenhouse and all the flowers are thistles or something like that. And you're just battered about here and here and here and here. And you're trying to, stop, slow down. But you're stuck in the middle of it. And for me, that's when, to use some labels again, if you want to use like victim and victor, when you're stuck in the middle of your thoughts, you're very much a victim to your thoughts, good, bad, or otherwise. When we step outside of them is when we become the victor, even before we've done any work in changing, resolving, and whatever words you wish to use. And I can remember that moment. It was just the coolest thing. There was two of them underneath this tree when all of a sudden if I could give it a spatial relationship, it's like I was looking at this and thought and memory and projected future. And it's like I was looking at them. It's the coolest experience ever. I know many of you have had that. It's like when that happens the first time. Because you see, for so many of us, we've never had that experience. Most of all, because we haven't really been taught accurately from a mechanical perspective what our mind is and how it works and things like that, and how to manage it. And it's like I slipped outside of it, and there was this crazy sense of peacefulness. Because when you're in that observer mode, looking at all this stuff, not participating in it so much, just observing it, I can remember this so clearly. You're not happy. You're not sad. You're not anything. You're not numb, right? You're very aware, but you're not feeling anything because you're now simply observing. You're just observing this and observing that. And it can be because so many of us, again, we pre-live future or reliving the past, right? And worry comes from pre-living a future, again, tangent. Those things that used to worry me, I was immersed, like when worry comes, I'm just using that label. It takes you over, doesn't it? It controls you, not the other way around. So you're trying to stop it. You got to get outside of it first. And so here I was observing, very much looking, well, this is this pre-lived future, or this is this memory that I would relive over and over and over again, very traumatic memories over and over in the future that when it plays out, you go, right? Those were still there, but I was now observing them. It was so crazy. I can remember it so clearly. These things are still playing out like they did, always did. Nothing changed. And at that point, nothing had changed in my physical either. Isn't that interesting? But I wasn't feeling anything. Not numb, right? I just wasn't feeling anything. I was just observing them. And I was like, that is so weird. Because these pre-lived futures, relive memories that held me captive in so many ways, I wasn't feeling captive anymore. They were still there. That's just it. Nothing had changed externally, even in my mind at that point. They were still there, but I was now observing them. I wasn't caught up in the middle of them. And for me, again, this is much easier said than done. Trust me. I mean, thank God we've got the rest of our time here and who knows how much more to figure this stuff out. Some days I do really well, except on the days when I don't, right? But in so many respects, that's what freedom is. Freedom is not having all those thoughts, those traumas on and on, disappear. Freedom. Like what? Yeah, no, very good. Yes, absolutely. Very much. And I mean, you, Cheryl, I mean, you know all about this. I mean, you work with this in so many different ways. It's getting outside of that. So now you're, again, observing, not participating in them. And then from that place of, for me, peacefulness equates to power. Right? Again, topic for another discussion, because the normals, what they think is power is actually control, which is based on fear. Off we go. So we're in that observer mode. We're in that space of peacefulness, which equates to power, which equates to the absence of the need, at least right now, to change any of not just your thoughts, not just the stories that your mind tells you, but even these physical external events in your life. In that moment, you are simply observing. And then you can start to choose how you want to manage this, how you want to manage this thought, how you want to manage that memory, right? How you want to manage, again, that pre-lived future. But now you're doing it from that place of peace and power rather than being stuck in the middle of it. Okay, so to recap, because I've been going, this has been good conversation. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for sharing your comments. That it's just so much fun. I think the biggest, I don't know if I'd say the biggest, but these last 2 years have been such a detriment to what I call community. Physically, of course, thank God we've had this virtual here, but it's that sense of community. I call it community with a capital C, is so vital. And to me, even more now, as we're starting to, I was going to say rebuild. No, that's not right. I can say it better. To create new things, right? Not even trying to rebuild, if you want to call it, what was lost and things like that. Not even so much trying to heal injuries, although that's a piece of it, but creating something new. What's a new thing we want to create now, right? And we're going to create that together, right? Never before has, I'll say, real community been more crucial than right now as we're building this new amazing thing, and we get to kind of figure out what that thing looks like. Wow, that was a really crazy tangent, but I liked it. So the quick recap is, the most common question I was asked was, how do I, at meditation gatherings, or what brought them there, was how do I stop thinking, or how do I slow down my mind? And the key to creating, oh, thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate that. It's I love doing it. Keeping it real, sometimes it's a lot more challenging than others, especially in this last while. Amazing how deceptively easy it is to feel, I don't know, isolated, I guess. And do I have value? Oh, Carl, okay. Only times my mind seems to empty out and be at peace when I'm deepest in drum set, not meditation. Powerful. Wow, that was really, I'm going to read this because this may end up on YouTube and stuff like that. So Carl says, wise words, Brother S. Thank you. The only time, and he's a musician, the only times, this is really good. The only times my mind seems to empty out and be at peace is when I'm deep inside a groove on my drum set. Not meditation in a purest sense, but powerfully relaxing, refreshing on its own. At 65, with 5 decades of stages and studios behind me, this is my path to release from what I think I know to what I can now begin to understand. That was really, really good, buddy. And I think that's that thing. So many times meditation ends up being framed as in something that you do, not this state of awareness that you slip into or that you create. And that's so wonderfully said. So when you're in that groove on your drum set, you're totally immersed in something that just gives you great pleasure and purpose. And when you're focused on that, you're not focused on, I don't know, what I did 10 years ago or what do I need to do next week or whatever, right? I think that's the thing. Meditation is not something that you do. It's a state of awareness. Oh, sounds like a sound frequency. Oh, that's cool too. Yeah. I mean, there's the neat thing about this is there's just so many ways we can look at things and we can discuss things. And that's what I love about this whole genre, if you want to put it that way, is there's really an infinite number of ways to understand it, perspectives to take, and different perspectives to learn from other people. Because there's no one right answer and there's no one right way. We all get to share and learn from each other. So to recap, because I'm going to put this, I'll edit it and do different things with it later. So the number one question I get asked the most, the number one question I used to get asked the most, here I'm going to change this again, because what I'm going to do is edit this and put it at the front. So if a person doesn't want to watch the whole thing, they can watch the last bit. So, okay, here we go.